Welcome. This is Jean Maroney of Thinking Directions, and today I'm offering a free teaser called Set Goals That Motivate. This is a teaser for my launch program, which is starting a week from Saturday. It's the idea of launch is you achieve a major goal in 8 weeks, and you do that with a lot of coaching from me and sometimes from Lynn Zinser, my head coach, who subs for me usually once or twice during the launch. Daily thought work, which I send out to you, and a lot of coaching on making sure you set a goal that will actually motivate you. This, I have found, is actually the most important thing for success in getting the results you want in the world. You need to set the goal in such a way that it will, in fact, help to guide what you need to do and motivate what you need to do. If you get the goal formulated in a way that messes that up, it can be very difficult to follow through. And it's just, if you're going to be putting an effort on something, you want to make sure that you can make it as likely to succeed as possible. There are a lot of people who talk about goal setting. Of course, this is all because of Ed Locke and his research partner. God, I should have looked it up. I know his name, but it's going right out of my head right now. They did a lot of work that shows people get a lot more done if they set goals. And there are a lot of people who talk about them. So you may have heard of SMART goals, or I have a book called Hard Goals by Mark Murphy over here. You may have heard of big, hairy, audacious goals. There's a lot of catchy stuff out there about goals. But I am a nuts and bolts kind of girl. I am an engineer. I want to talk about what are the real psychological principles that you need to know so that you can figure out how to make your goal work for you, because that is really where the test is. And I tell you, this is, I think how to set goals has been revolutionized by Ayn Rand's views in ethics and epistemology, which have influenced my work a lot. And if you see on the handout, if you have the handout, a goal, we all kind of know what goals are. It's something you're going to do, you decide to do. Well, I think it's important to realize it's an intention you set. So it's mental, but it's to achieve some outcome out in the world. And you don't set goals if you're pretty sure that's going to happen anyway. I mean, I don't set a goal to have dinner today. Dinner's going to happen one way or another. I don't need any special attention for that. So I don't need to set a special intention to make sure it happens. You set goals for things that without some of that extra effort and that extra intention, they aren't going to happen. And that usually means that they're going to change the status quo. Because like the reason I'm not worried about having dinner tonight is because I have a lot of processes in place to make sure that dinner happens. And so I had a little conversation with my husband earlier today. This is too small an example, but so what are we going to have? He suggested hamburgers. Okay, it's not sexy, but there is hamburger in the meat drawer. There are buns in the freezer, which have now come out of the freezer. I bought some ingredients for salad. Dinner is going to happen. Exactly what time it happens, I don't know, but it is going to happen. I have the ingredients we're going to eat. And that's because I have a whole lot of standard operating procedures to make sure that happens. But I'm working on a book, and that definitely needs a goal, because it is way easier to not work on the book. And in fact, urgent things that happen get in the way of working on it. So a goal is an intention you set. You want to get a particular outcome. It's going to require some extra effort. And what the key thing that makes my approach to this different from the more common approaches out there is that I really look at it from an issue of objectivity. This is something I got from Ayn Rand. And this is why I say a goal should both guide and motivate action. It needs to be both focused on the real world out there outcome, which needs to be objective in some way. It needs to be something you can actually see. You can actually need to be able to see the result. But it also needs to integrate with your values. And I think the bigger the goal, the more meaningful the value you get from achieving it. And, book is a big goal. I'm very motivated by discovery and communication. I mean, that's why I do what I do. But there are also other things that you need to make sure that you take into account. Like you need to be certain, contextually certain that this goal is achievable. If you think it might be impossible, that is, first of all, if you have any worry that it's going to be impossible, this is really going to mess up your motivation because although you want it, if you think it's impossible, you're going to be in immediate conflict. You're going to get paralyzed. And that is something that often takes extra thinking. You have a general idea of what you want, but you don't know how to do it. You often, the longer range the goal, the more likely you don't know how to do it. So how do you figure out how to set that goal in a way that you can be contextually certain that, yes, you can achieve it and that it will guide you now, it could be a 5-year goal. How do you actually work on that this week? I think if you have a goal, one of my principles I teach in my thinking lab, if you have a goal, that means you should be working on it in every 2-week period. That this is influenced by, some of you may know, Agile and Scrum, and this is done in the software field, but it's also done in field experiments where I learned it. It's done in writing. You need to have work going on and results coming every 2 weeks or so. And I think if you have a goal, no matter how long it is, it's not really a goal if you aren't working on it in every 2-week period. It's on your maybe someday list instead of an actual goal. But that adds a lot of complexity. Like you have something you want to do, but you don't know how to work on it now. That is part of the challenge of setting goals that guide and motivate. The way that I would say it, the way I sum up the standards that you get from objectivity is the goal needs to be clear-cut, doable, and important. And what that means depends on the time scale. If it's clear-cut, doable, important, clear-cut, you'll know where you're going. Doable, you know you can do it. Important, you'll want to do it. You need those 3 things to get you into action. That's what the real standards are for setting a goal that motivates. Now, as I mentioned to people who got on early, we're going to talk about, I kind of mentioned some time scales. We're going to talk about each of the time scales and what the standards are for each time scale. It is way more interesting for you and for me if we talk about that with real examples. So before I give you any more theory or background, I want to plant the seed. I am looking for a volunteer for each of these, particularly these 3 time scales. Long-term, which is greater than a year. So I don't know, you got a goal to change the world? That would be a greater than a year thing, okay? If you got a goal to create a larger business, that would be greater than a year. Looks like Philip might have a greater than a year. You have a greater than a year goal here, Philip?
Yeah. Should it be something that I actually plan to get started on soon, or could it be just, let's say I want to get started on it at some point in the future? And
It's good enough for the purposes of this discussion. Okay?
okay.
Good. So you've got a long range. So Philip has a long range. So I'm going to ask
Yes.
you what it is shortly. Well, actually, tell me what it is right now.
Sometime I would like to make a movie adaptation of a popular Harry Potter fan fiction.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay. And I see Stephanie says you have a goal to redo your office during launch, which is 8 weeks. So that would be an objective. So that's the second time scale. And we can have more than one on each time scale, folks. So an objective is something that takes 1 month to 1 year. So it's less than 1 year. And this would be, if you think you can get it done in 2 months, it's an objective. And here's some other objectives that you guys might have. Like have a wedding. That's usually done in less than a year. And it takes quite a little bit of effort. If you've been married, you know that takes quite a bit of effort. Diet, if you want to lose some weight, that typically is a less than 1 year goal, right? I mean, sometimes we work at it for more than 1 year, but usually you want to try to get some significant movement in that in 6 months or less than a year. Or get in shape. Again, get in shape for summer. It's April. Summer season starts in a couple months. Maybe you want to look great at the beach in 2 months. Those would be some other objectives, and maybe someone else has an objective that they wouldn't mind sharing and talking about. Susan has, I want to turn to an unfinished goal of putting some of my teaching work into a book. Right. So that would probably be, do you think that's a less than a year, or do you think that's a multiple year goal, Susan?
I'm not sure. I think it's probably more than a year.
Okay, great, fantastic. So we've got two long range, one objective so far. Then there's another time scale, which is I call the key results, which is less than 2 weeks. So this is something you want to get done, and you're pretty sure you can get it done in less than 2 weeks. Morally certain is the way I say it. What I mean by that is you really know enough about this that you can predict your time. So like some of you may have had a key result scale thing of uh, getting your taxes done in the last 2 weeks. Lana, do you have a goal that you want to add to the pod here?
Yes, I would like to publish an article for my dissertation, at least one, by the end.
Okay,
And there would
and
be
great. Is that something you think you can adapt in less than 2 weeks, or is that going to take a little longer than that?
no, I think by the end of the year, I don't think it's gonna with everything
Okay,
else.
so that's an objective. So we now have two objectives. We've got Stephanie's and Lana's objectives. So does anyone have a nice short-term key result that they have that's, kind of standalone? Sometimes like write a newsletter article, which is only 1,000 words, that I can do in less than 2 weeks.
I think I have one.
Okay, great. Tell me.
I would like to reorganize my space, my workspace. I recently reorganized the room,
Okay.
but now I would like to pay more attention to the stationery, to get the planning easier, you know. Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
And I think
fantastic.
I'm going to do it in less than 2 weeks.
Yes, okay, great, terrific. Okay, so thank you for giving me those examples. And if someone else wants to volunteer in the course of this, you can put something in the chat. And I already see we have a question, so I'm going to get to that in a second. But let me just give you a little bit more background on this. The problem you can have with some of the standard advice, like SMART goals. SMART goals, the idea is you're supposed to, it's like the acronym is everything on these, right? It's supposed to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. That's how you get SMART. And this is taught in many, many classes, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's related to what I said, right? Specific and measurable. This helps make sure that it's out there in the world. If it's not measurable, if it's not out there in the world. Attainable, that's pretty, and realistic, that's pretty much doable. Timely, that relates to important. So it's, it's related, but, like if you have a goal, like reorganize your workspace, is that really measurable? I mean, do you want to actually put a metric on that? I don't think you need a metric on that, right? It's kind of done or it's not done. Or if you look at a book, so like a lot of times when you do SMART goals, you also put a particular time on it. But like how long you're going to take, like to write a book, often you don't actually know, and you actually need it to be somewhat open-ended. So what I find is that if you over-specify how you set the goal, it sometimes can completely demotivate you, because if you decide that, like say I'm building my business, suppose I set a measurable goal of I'm going to get 100 new people on my newsletter. Well, you can definitely measure that, but usually what that means is you get feedback. Metrics are important for feedback. So you can see the thing you were doing to try to get people on your newsletter, you either succeeded or you didn't. But if you focus on the number, you can be really disappointed that you failed. Whereas if you focus on, I'm going to do this experiment to see if this actually gets 100 more people on my newsletter, then you succeeded in running the experiment. And the point of the experiment is to get information. And you find out, yes, I have figured out the way to do that, or no, I haven't. I need to I need to run a different experiment. And that's a completely different way of staying motivated on the task when you are not so tied to a particular concrete outcome. You actually see that the process and making sure that you have clear results from a process can keep you motivated, whereas sometimes over specifying how fast it's going to get done or what exactly is going to get done actually gets in the way. So let's talk about this with the long-term goals. So we've got Philip and Susan with long-term goals. So So Philip, so let me tell you, for long-term goals, I have here that the time scale is, on that time scale, greater than a year. Oh, actually, hold on one second. I want to answer two questions. What is the difference between a goal and an objective? So I use goal as the generic term. So all of these are goals. You can have long-term goals, you can have objectives, so long-term goal is a type of goal. Objective is a type of goal. Key result is a type of goal. You can say in a sense that a task is a type of goal. And sometimes you actually do need to set the step as a goal. You say, all right, I'm going to actually show up in the kitchen. Let me do that. Normally the step is not a goal, but even tasks can be a goal. I'm going to get that in 2 hours, I'm going to get the kitchen cleaned. That's my goal. I want to get that done in 2 hours. Or I'm going to make the food for my diet. I'm going to do that Sunday afternoon in 2 hours. You set a goal to actually get that done in that defined time. So a goal is generic. It can be at many different time scales. I use it as the generic term, and I use these other terms to help specify the time scale of the goal, because that is the most important differentiator between goals, is the time scale of the goal. The standards change with the time scale. Mark has a question here. A goal can be measured. The objective is its contribution to your life and values. Oh, so no, objective is the goal. I'm not sure I totally follow that, Mark. Tell you what, if that's not clear by the end, let's talk about that in the Q&A. Is that okay? Or is it like quick, do you think?
I was responding to Pooja's question, just offering an answer.
Oh, okay. So I have a different answer from you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Right. Okay, great. Terrific. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the long-term goal. So I think the criteria for a long-term goal greater than a year is that the goal itself can be a little abstract and a little vague. And you may not know exactly how to get to the success, but it does need to be personally meaningful. And by that, I mean, it needs to be tied to some really deep values of yours. So Philip, let's talk about this movie adaptation that you're considering setting as a long-range goal.
Right.
So let's hear about that. What makes this personally meaningful?
I love this fan fiction. It's hysterical. It's called My
Okay.
Immortal, and it is. Oh, sorry, did I freeze? No. Okay.
Your
It's
sound
called
is
My
fine.
Immortal, and it gained notoriety as what people called the worst fan fiction ever written. It was
Okay.
almost certainly written as it was almost certainly written as a parody, because it contains just about every bad plot and writing decision you could possibly make, and it's executed with perfect comedic timing.
Okay. All right.
Other people have made web adaptations of it, but they never finished them because it's too long. But I think it would be hilarious, because one of the really funny things about a screen adaptation would be the juxtaposition between how ludicrous the plot and the character action is compared to the actual quality, actually putting on like a quality production with. I want the quality of the production to be in contrast to the absurdity of the plot and dialogue.
Okay. All right. So you really have kind of a vision of why this would be, as you said, hilarious and really entertaining, super entertaining. Right.
Yes.
Now, why you? So I'm just going to ask, because this is because, goal is something, intention you set because you want to achieve this outcome. Now, why you?
Right. Well, I've always wanted to make a movie or a play, something creative. Well, I want to do a bunch of creative things, but it's just one of the things that I want to do.
Okay.
I want to work in or make at least one movie.
Okay. So this is actually very important, because this is certainly a multi-year goal, right? And let's talk about, so it can be abstract or even vague. It's actually not particularly vague or abstract. It's actually pretty concrete, in fact, right?
Right.
You've got a whole visualization of it. Now, I just want to point out that actually is not necessarily a benefit of a long-term goal in some cases, particularly in a case like this, because you're not actually on a path for this right now. Is that right, Philip? I mean, you're not like working on.
Sorry?
Excuse me?
Sorry?
You're not actually on a path to this right now. Like you aren't committed to a career, as a screenwriter or developing this.
Correct.
You're actually working on it in another creative area right now, right?
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I know Philip from a previous launch, so that's how I can say that. So, so one of the challenges of when you have a particular project that's going to be long range, and you don't know exactly how to get there from here, right? So let's name some of the things you don't know how to get to, how you don't know how to get there from here. Name 5 things you don't know how to do.
I know nothing about camera technology. I don't know about wardrobe design. I don't know about common industry practices and why they are that way.
Okay.
I don't know how to manage a team of people.
Okay.
And I don't, let's see. Oh, I don't know how to make special effects.
Okay. And can I add one other?
Yeah.
So this is also going to cost a lot of money, right? I mean, you want really high production quality. Is that right?
Yeah, I would be okay with high production for an indie film, but it has to be good enough that it has the desired effect.
Right. Which is, which costs money. Someone needs to invest in this to make this happen, right?
Right.
And that's another. So there are a lot of unknowns here. Now, this does not mean you shouldn't set this goal, right? So, but it does mean that whenever there are unknowns, when there's not a clear path to success, the critical thing that you need is more motivation for it, right? So we named what, half a dozen things that you're going to need to learn. If you actually want to be the producer of this, sounds like the producer and director of this is what it sounds like. Then, and actually, are you thinking of writing the screenplay too?
Yeah, I thought about it. Yeah,
Okay,
probably.
all right. So, but the point is, you're going to actually need to develop writing skills. You're going to need to develop managing skills. You're going to need to find allies who can help invest in this and who understand the things you don't understand and can either teach you or be on the team who can so you're going to need to learn how to motivate other people to get excited about this. You see what I'm saying? This is all possible. This is absolutely all possible. And it's like 5 major skills that you would need to develop. Does that make sense?
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Right. So part of what you need to do when you look at a really long-term goal and you say, okay, well, yes, this could be done, but I need to do this and this and this and this. I need to develop this skill. I need to develop this, like for me right now, the email that went out, the email is going out on Sunday is about learning to write on a schedule. It's like I solved my writing problems by not requiring that I write on a schedule. And now to grow my business, I have to write on a schedule. It's like, I had to develop some more tools for that. And it was not hard. It was hard. It took like an extra 10 hours I wasn't expecting last week to actually solve some process problems for myself so that I can start actually sending emails when I'm intending to do them on a schedule. So, there's all kinds of stuff. Now, you can learn all of that. And you want to look at the long-term goal with the guy, okay, yeah, I need to learn this and this and this. And boy, this is worth it. I want to learn all these things. And probably some of these things you're actually learning in the work you're doing right now. Is that true, Philip? Can you name one aspect of that you think you're learning?
That's well, in my current day job as a translator, certainly I'm getting plenty of experience writing.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. And there is something related to that. Although it's not screenwriting, but you're definitely getting some experience getting the gist of something and translating it. Okay, great.
Right, including dialogue, which is, yeah.
Including dialogue. Okay, great. Now, what about, I mean, you have a creative project on the side, right?
Right, the computer game.
Yeah. I mean, there you're working on plot in effect, right?
True, although in this case it would be a movie adaptation, so the plot is already written for me.
Right. Okay. Good point. Right. So you would need to, so you see, part of the thing you need to think about here is, well, do you want to learn this stuff? And if you do want to learn this stuff, you want to, and you actually wanted to set this goal seriously, then you should be able to see how the current creative project you have is actually helping you move in that direction. Otherwise, it's not a goal. It is on a maybe someday list. And part of the way you decide that is you actually look at these things, say, well, what's involved, and am I willing to actually do that? Is it worth it if it's going to take a long time? And I don't know, what do you think the answer to that is?
I think the answer is, it sounds like it is on a maybe someday list, because if I had to choose between only getting one done, the computer game would come first.
Okay, great. So it doesn't hurt to do some long-range planning, but you see, you're not ready to commit to this because it's not something that you're actually right now can easily motivate yourself to do all the work to get it. And so it's not the right thing, but you can put it in the back of your list. And so, like, for example, if you came across a collaborator, a potential collaborator who actually knew a bunch of this stuff, by having thought about it now, it could come off the maybe someday list, and you could look and reevaluate how hard would this be with this partner. I'm just making that up. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that clarifying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's helpful. And yeah, this goal is motivating, even though I'm not working on it right now. So, but I can see why that's an important factor.
It's an important factor to be motivated on the means to the end. So even though your means to the end is your means to the end is kind of vague at this point, right? You know, you need to be able to do this, this, and this.
Right.
So you'd need to develop those skills. So that's what you would actually probably need to do to get started on this. And that's part of
Right.
you can test whether you're ready to commit to it right now.
Yeah, and I actually am motivated on some of the means, the writing, figuring out what sort of scenes I would need, what sort of special effects, ways to make that all happen. And there are some things that I'm less interested in, like how to get the wardrobes together or the camera technology. I'd be happy to hire someone to do that.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if you want to commit to this, you're committing to everything, right? If you want to commit to this now, you need to factor that into what you're doing. If you don't want to commit to this now, you can just keep it on the maybe someday list and keep an eye out for opportunities. Those are both possible. Good.
All right.
Okay, great.
Thanks a lot.
Great. So let's talk about Susan's goal. The goal of putting some of her teaching work into a book.
Yeah.
So now are you pretty clear on what this book is?
Yes.
And
it was it's my written version, which I already own, of course, of a manual for teaching music in a Montessori classroom.
Right. Yes. And so that's actually, this is also actually a fairly clear goal. And you actually have a lot of experience with it because you've actually taught people this, right?
Yes. Yes.
And how close are you to a book form for this?
Well, I haven't, I have what I wrote for myself. And what I want to do is to turn that into something that would be intelligible to other people, especially, but not limited to Montessori teachers.
Right. So I'm going to ask, so you actually have a path to the goal because you have a starting place. And I mean, do you have an idea of how to go from this particular, from the notes you have now to something that is more?
I'm not entirely clear on what I would need to include, because when I taught this, it was to a group of students that had a very different context. And so that context has to get included somehow.
Right.
And I'm not clear on that.
So great. So this is, so this is a great example of what happens with a long range goal. A lot of parts of it are clear, but the actual path to the goal is not completely clear. Right. Because you actually are unsure about how to, what exactly a teacher would need as opposed to what the students need. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Did I
right.
name that accurately?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Okay, great. So why is this personally meaningful to you?
Because I really loved the work. I kind of invented it, semi-invented it, based on some other people's work. And I was very happy with it. I think it worked very well in a classroom, and I don't want to be the only one doing it.
Okay, so I'm hearing, so it's very important to, if you're going to commit to something, very important to know what that firsthand selfish value is. And I'm hearing actually the originality. This is an achievement of yours.
Mhm.
And that, I have to say, I mean, I think when you do something that is original, it is very personal. It's really, it's like a part of you that you created this. Am I getting that right, Susan?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's really meaningful. And making that have a life of its own is then very meaningful because it's part of, it's like a legacy of sorts. And it's part of making that discovery real, it so that other people can take advantage of it. That can be very, very motivating. And that's what I think I'm hearing from you.
Right. And I got that by teaching it to other teachers.
Great.
During coursework, verbally, but I want to put it in book form too.
Right, exactly. Right. And the course is not available to anyone at this point, right?
That's right.
Right, right. Okay. So it is very personally meaningful. So now I think this might be a good one because I think we have a little more knowledge about what's involved to see how this would look if you were to try to commit to it. And basically, when someone has a long range goal, I think it needs to be committed all the way down through objectives and key results. So if you were to try to do this, what do you think might be a goal for the coming 1 to 12 months? What do you think the first goal, what do you think would actually materially move you forward? Because I think this is something that's very important. If you only see the long range goal, if you don't see something in the shorter term to aim at, it can feel like it's going to take forever, particularly if it turns out to be harder than you think. So you need something that's more on the time scale that you can envision. And what do you think would be like the first phase of this project?
I don't even have that very clear. Um, the materials, the work that I've got is kind of scattered, in various bookcases and closets and stuff. So I think I'd first want to gather it all together and remind myself of what I've got.
Okay.
Um,
So what you're describing is actually a key result. It's a 2-week goal, right?
Probably, yeah.
To actually collect all that stuff and refresh your recollection and get an idea of what's involved so that you can then think about what would be an appropriate 3-month, 2-month, 3-month, 6-month move forward. So now, so you see, that's a key result. You could absolutely get that done in 2 weeks. You could collect it all in one place and review it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I could do that.
Right. So you see, that's an objective key result, which would materially move you forward because it would put you in a position where you could then make the next key decision. Now, it's still helpful to have an idea of what might be the in-between thing between 2 weeks and, say, 2 years to write the whole book. And I think you gave me a hint to something on this, Susan. What you told me is you're not exactly sure what has to go into this book for the reader's context. Did
Yes,
I
that's
get
right.
that right?
Right.
So it may be answering that question. So like getting a plan for what needs to go into the book is in fact your objective, which might take you, I don't know, maybe it will take you 2 months after you get the stuff together. Maybe it will take you a little longer. But it's something that if you had that, then you would actually be in a position to then outline the book. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that would be the goal of gathering all this stuff, is to say, look back through it and say, what did I only know because I already had teacher training or something? What else would I need to include?
Aha, right. Okay, so there's the physical collection of it just to warm up the data banks. And then there's a project which also would need to be broken down into key results to really go through it with that perspective to answer this critical question that you see. This is how you set intermediate goals on a long range thing. You figure out the thing that you think would be really important to do, which would materially move you forward. And that came out of just Susan's thinking about this long range goal. I'm sort of half talking to you and half talking to the class. But do you agree with that, Susan? That makes sense?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And you see, this is how you get momentum on a long range goal is you see, oh my God, well, if I got it all collected, then I could get started. Great, you have a key result. Oh yeah, if I could answer that question, then I could move and figure out the book. Great, you have your objective. And you already had your long range goal. And that's about the level of planning that you need. I'm a big believer, only about 5% of your time should be spent planning. You want to spend most of your time doing. And part of the reason I set goals in this way is to make sure you don't overthink the 3-month or 6-month goal, particularly when it's a project of your own. I mean, it's different if you've got a team working together and you have to coordinate 10 people. Then you have to actually work it all out, but you also have to have something that you already know how to do so you can coordinate that in advance. But when it's your goal and nobody's done it before, you need to have this kind of real clarity about the 2-week key result, a real motivation to get to that objective that's going to be in a few months, and then an even bigger motivation for the long range. But you only need that kind of granularity to get going and get motivated and start doing whatever needs to get done in these 2 weeks. Good for now, Susan?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay, great. So then we got a couple people with objectives. So I think Lana, you have an objective. You want to, which is to make a article from your dissertation. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us about why you want to do this, because for a goal, for an objective, it needs to have a significant payoff because it's going to be some work, right? So what's your significant payoff going to be, Lana?
Question, usual, you challenge us.
Good.
Good payoff. I guess part of me, like these dissertations, you spend all of this time and it ends it up on a shelf that nobody reads. And unless it manifests in something usable, which means taking the 300 pages and chunking in some kind of, functional, how-to recommendations or findings, gives it a visibility.
So this is similar to Susan's motivation for her book, is that you have this, a PhD is an original creation and you're proud of it, right? So now you're thinking, I have this creation. I want this creation to have legs. That's what I think I'm hearing here.
Yes. And some findings where, I think is very relevant to the field because it's a field of education. So some of the findings I think should be heard, and I haven't seen it before.
Great. And is this something where you have, like, say, 5 main points in your thesis and there's, number 1 and number 2, like, do you know which part of your thesis you would want to get out there first?
Yes.
And why that part?
Because it affects nursing students' health. So it's just directly like the outcomes is right there if educators understand the problem.
Okay, so this could make a material difference in the quality of life of a bunch of nursing students. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so it is a little bit a save the world type goal, right? Wow, this would be really good for a lot of people. So that can be a big motivation. Like, I figured this out and this could have an effect on the world. I want it to have an effect on the world. Great. Okay, well then let's talk about so now and about how long do you think this might take? Obviously you're working full time, but
I never done any. This is going to be, it's like dissertations, first time project.
First time project, okay. And you've written a dissertation.
Okay, yes.
And this exists, right? And have you ever written an article for publication in something like this before?
No.
Okay, so let's hear a wild guess here about what do you think it's going to take?
First, identify the publication. So I can, figure out the target audience. So that's just, between who am I targeting and what publication is appropriate.
Okay.
And what is the process, submitting an article. See if I need to collaborate with any people from my dissertation committee because they have some, they have experience, they published it.
Okay.
And that would be first step. And then from there, I would be able to decide which aspect, based on the target audience, I can, tailor, the material or a content that I have.
Right. Great. So this is a great example. You're already thinking in terms of the first step actually gets you the information to take, the first key result actually gets you the information to be able to do the next thing. And given that you wrote the whole thesis and this is going to be more editing than it is going to be writing new stuff, right? Does it make sense that you could get this done in 6 months given your current work schedule?
I think so. I think, sometimes, 6 months is reasonable, definitely.
Okay, great. See, that's all you need for an objective. It needs to seem, not crazy. It's you have a sense of what's going to be happening over the next 6 months. You know what your work schedule is. You know how you did the dissertation despite working full time, right? You also
a lot
have
of sleepless night.
Yeah, right. Well, hopefully not too many of those on this next one, but yep. So, and you also have the other thing that I'm hearing, you see, Lana has a pretty clear idea of what's needed to achieve this objective. That is part of the difference between her and the longer range goals, is that she's got people from her committee that she can talk to get advice. You probably have a short list of journals that you probably want to look at to see which one might go. Is that right?
Yeah, I have like about 3 or 4.
Right, that you could so in 2 weeks, you could actually research the journals and get some advice from someone on which one you think you should publish in and find out their publication standards. So, like the 2-week goal of actually, if you were to commit to this, if you're saying, okay, I'm committing to this goal, it'd be really clear to you what you need to do in the first 2 weeks, because you could definitely do that and that would get you set. And then you could have help from the editors and the dissertation people on help to guide you on exactly what you needed to do. But you already know the topic, you already know, who this would benefit, and you just need to get that a little more fine-tuned. And then you could start writing things, like get a draft of it done to get then feedback from, say, one of your advisors or something like that. Does that make sense?
Would you recommend, like for a dissertation, what was really helpful to have a dissertation coach, to have be like accountable and advice as I would progress, so I would not like ended up in the weeds? How
Right.
sometimes we get like stuck somewhere because we think it's important and somebody says, no, move on.
Well, that is a personal preference to some degree. My bet, I mean, it's the kind of thing, my inclination, and this is personal prejudice. You might actually prefer to have a coach on board from the beginning. But my personal prejudice is I'd like to see what I can do. And if I have trouble following through, like if you keep setting 2-week key results and doing them, you don't need a coach. But if you keep setting if you set 2-week key results and you either don't do it, or you set a 2-week key result and then you get into the weeds and you can't get it done in 2 weeks, then it might be helpful to get a coach to either help you set a different key result or give you the accountability to make sure you get it done. But you also, if it's accountability you want, if one of the faculty on your committee you think would make a good co-author, you can get accountability with a co-author without paying anyone, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why people collaborate on these things. It's very helpful. Okay, I'm going to get you a copy of this draft by such and such, and then you're going to get me your comments by such and such, and whatever it is, right? But my expectation, I have not done this, but I know a number of people who have published papers from parts of their PhD dissertations. And my expectation is it's not going to be that hard to make this adaptation. That would be my expectation. But
that's good.
Yeah, but I may be totally wrong because there may be something, I mean, the fact that you're concerned about it means you may know something that I don't know. But
I just know how helpful it was to have this, somebody look at my writing on a weekly basis,
yeah.
know, just
and
pretty
there-
much zooming in like, okay, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. Why don't you just stop here and, refocus on something else? I guess I just, besides my new friend, ChatGPT, that was my other friend.
Yes, right. So, as I said, I mean, I think that that's something, this is part of what you do when you set something that you think you can do in 2 weeks. Is it something you can do by yourself, or is it something that you're sure you can do if you have a coach? Well, then if you want to set that goal and you think you need a coach, you get a coach. You do what,
But I like your idea to at least experiment. What is my personal endurance and,
Yeah.
ability to stay focused without, it's like sometimes that external accountability for me, somehow it works. Like I will do my job 24/7, but then
right.
myself ended up to be, on the hold because it's not as important. So having accountability from outside seemed to bring me back of what is important to me and I need to deliver.
Yes, and a lot of people find accountability makes a big difference. I mean, so here's a little promo for the launch program. This is one of the things, the benefits from joining the 8-week launch program, because there are 2 coaching calls a week, and you keep, the first thing we have you do is you figure out your goal. It's achieve a major goal in 8 weeks. So people come in usually with an 8-week goal, and I help them figure out how to actually think about that goal and set something. We make sure they have a 2-week key result. And all of the coaching is around getting that 2-week key result. And if you don't get it, you need some more coaching to help you, either with the disappointment or the accountability or whatever it is. And that's one of the things that we do. So Lana's been in that program, but it's not perfect, right? It's not going to give writing feedback, right? So different people need different coaching, and but that can be very, very helpful to get a project jump started. I mean, that's one of the things we do in launch a lot of times is get people, for example, on a writing schedule. And, in the 8 weeks, they really get so that they're on a roll. They don't necessarily finish the whole project. They probably often come in not thinking they could finish the project, but they get on a routine where they can actually manage that themselves. So that's your little advertisement for the launch, which, as I said, starts just a week from Saturday. Good for now, Lana?
Thank you. Yeah, and somebody put nonfiction writing by Ayn Rand. I listened some of it, but I'm afraid to get distracted. How valuable you think that is? Somebody, Mark.
So it's a terrific book. It's more for, I don't think it's that helpful for writing articles, journal articles for a
Okay.
scholarly publication.
Distracted.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the part that would be most useful is actually in the thinking lab in the nonfiction writing class, which I know you've had access to. So the parts that are like directly applicable to turn out writing on a schedule, I think are in there.
Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
haven't explored that. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, we have another objective, which is Stephanie, who wants to redo her office in 8 weeks. So this is not something you could do in 2 weeks, right?
No, not the whole thing. But the reason I want to do it on launch is to try to get it done in 8 weeks, which I think is doable. And so breaking it down into and having the accountability and having the 2-week key results, because it's the value is versatility and ability to use the room comfortably for painting, my work, and the book, because the painting has become important.
Okay, so you really want it to be multi-purpose and you want to be able to easily switch between these 3 purposes.
Yeah, and
it's not a huge office.
And be gorgeous.
Right, okay. And it's not a huge office, right?
No, it's not. It's
Right,
not huge, but Doug has said we can spend money on new office furniture.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about this. So let's try to get, so you have a pretty clear idea. Do you have a vision of what you think it's going to look like at the end of the 8 weeks? I mean, do you actually really, have you like solved the problem of how you're going to be able to make a quick switch between painting and writing?
I have partially, but I haven't discussed my solution with Doug. And he's going to do a lot of the physical work in here, but I have to make the decisions.
Okay, hold on. So you have what you think is a solution to this. So you have what you think you would like to be the vision. Although
Yes,
it hasn't been, it's a partnership, so it hasn't been approved.
it
Right.
hasn't been approved yet, and because
Okay.
he's smart on these things, and
Okay.
he will tell me and stop me from making a mistake.
Okay, great. So you have a very clear first task.
Clear-ish, let's say clear-ish, that's the thing.
No,
You see, I
no,
got-
no. Stop. You have a very clear first task. I wouldn't even call it a key result because I don't want you to take 2 weeks on it,
No,
which is to get clear on the goal. So this is because this is 8 weeks, it needs to be clearer, right? So the shorter time goal you have, the clearer the end result needs to be. And if you really want to have this done in 8 weeks, you need to know the end goal, and that is urgent. So you have okay, jump onto this, a task, I would say, to explain to the husband what it is that you want to do and see if you can get his okay. And then it may be a key result because it may be that he comes back with objections and you have to go back to the drawing board. So actually it is a key result. Your first key result is pin down the vision for the office. And that is absolutely urgent because you can't buy any supplies, you can't plan anything until you have that agreement. That is absolutely critical. And you see, that's actually what will expedite you. And if you can get that figured out before launch starts, then you're in a position to figure out, okay, so let's do it with your vision. So tell us what your vision is. How is Art going to make a switcheroo with writing? What's your vision? Recognizing this may not be the final decision.
my vision is that there's a new long table that's 74 to 78 inches long, and the end near the window is the painting nook, is where the easel is going to sit, so that I can just go over there and paint.
Okay.
And there's a place to keep the paint so it can be put away. The
But
books are
that's-
going to move down. There's going to be room there for it. And
so it's an actual dedicated space.
Yeah, a space and it's got the light coming in. It's by the window, so you get that
Okay.
lovely light. So I can actually set up a model the way I did before, but I'm closer to the light source, which is important
Okay.
for the painting
Okay,
work
great.
that I want to do.
So dumb question for you. If you decide that that's what you're going to do, what is the first thing that needs to be done that's going to really move you to that?
The first thing that needs to be done is Doug agrees with my vision.
No, forget that. I said, let's stipulate that this is the vision.
Okay.
And stipulate this is the vision. What needs, like, what's the long pole in the tent? Like, this needs to get done in order to let everything else unfold. So, like, it could be that figuring, like, I don't know your situation, so I'm going to give you 3 possibilities. One possibility is to actually make this space available. You're going to have to reduce the amount of stuff in your office. And so it may be that the long pole in the tent is actually reducing volume. You said the books were going to have to move. Maybe you'd actually need to either move the books or get rid of some books. I'm just making this up, right? That could be a possibility.
Oh, I
Another
see.
possibility is actually there's going to be a lot of new equipment, and figuring out the right equipment is going to be the difficult thing because there's going to be a lead time to actually get it or a lead time for him to build it. And so the actual design is, you have the concept, you have the concept to set the goal, but it may be the actual nuts and bolts of the design is the long pole in the tent.
Okay, so it is making the cutouts of the things that I want to put in here and doing the test on paper to see, does it actually work on paper?
Okay. All right, great.
Because he's told me to do that, and it's like, okay, I've got desks that we found online, new cabinetry.
Okay, so you actually have your key result. Your key result, actually, this is before you can talk with him. Is that right? Or are you going to talk with
Yeah, because if I can't make it work on paper to my satisfaction, there's no point in bugging him with it.
Talking to them. Okay, great. So that's actually a slightly different first step. You see how you have to think
Do
about
the floor plan with. Okay, yeah, and we found things online. I can get their measurements, make cutouts for the room plan. He set me up so I can do this pretty fast. I don't have to start from zero.
Right, but you see that this is what we're doing. You always think about what's the biggest obstacle to then moving everything around or, buying the furniture, whatever it is. That's how you think of it. You think of it in priority order and you keep figuring out the thing that is actually going to move this forward the most. And that's what
Yeah, and it's will the idea work on paper?
Yes, right. So this is actually a very common thing. Often the first key result is some kind of a design. Like in writing, the first key result is often an outline. In, architecture, right? The first key result is a sketch of the building and then a blueprint of the building, right? Before you have a building.
Yes.
And then in let's see, we did writing. Let's just pick one other. Well, in engineering, well, like prototype is often, usually there's a design for an engineering thing, and then there's a prototype. There's often that is what you need to do, particularly if there's some uncertainty about how to achieve the goal. So good. Now I'm noticing it's coming right up. So it's good for now, Stephanie?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Jean. Yeah, great.
I'm noticing we're coming up on 4. I still want to talk to Igor, and I want to talk to, and I've lost track who my other person was. I have another person, I think, with a key result, but it's definitely Igor that I want to talk to. But before, some of you probably have to go at the top of the hour. I am willing to stay on and answer questions about this as long as there are people with questions. That's what I do for these freebies, because that's part of the goal here. Part of the goal here is to really help you see how I can help you, because that's why it's a teaser for the launch program. Now you will get an email. I think there's an email going out either, I think at the top of the next hour, that will show you how you can sign up for launch. I hope you'll at least check out the launch program. And there'll also be an evaluation that goes out, and the recording will become available. That will happen later tonight, because it takes a while for it to finish processing, and that needs to be uploaded and everything like that. But I just want to close with the bottom line on this. If you have things you want to do in your life, getting help on making sure you set the goals so they'll motivate you is the #1 thing to make sure those things actually happen. If you have any struggle with this, this is something that is, I was thinking I might lead with this, but I'll close with this. My area in psychology is the interaction between the conscious mind and the automatic functions of memory and affect. And that's what you need to understand to really be able to set goals. Because when you set a goal and you need to figure out that means ends, you actually reorganize your memory banks so that you can see, oh, this goes to this, goes to this, goes to this, goes to this. That's the planning process. Now, when you do that, your memory system can then generate expectations about what's going to happen in the future. And as soon as you set a goal, you get a jolt of excitement, because, wow, this is going to be great. You feel a lot of pleasure. You start feeling positive emotions as soon as you set a goal. But then what happens is you start taking steps and it doesn't go the way you expected. You get new expectations generated. Expectations, which get triggered from memory, are the thing that cause emotions to trigger. Okay. And it's because of the way, when you set a goal, you organize your memory bank so you will have expectations about this goal. And if it's going well, you'll be really excited and confident. And if it's not going well, you will be frustrated. If you're not working on it, you will feel guilty. If you are, if people seem to be getting in your way, you'll feel angry. And that is all going to demotivate you. And so the more you understand about how to set these goals so they will continuously motivate you, and then manage your emotions when they come up to see how maybe your plan needs to adjust, the better and faster you'll be able to achieve these goals, especially goals that no one else has ever achieved before, that you're doing for the first time. So I love to help people with that. I love to help people with that. That's what I do in launch. I do it in the thinking lab on a more ad hoc basis, but in launch, we have 8 weeks where we really try to shoot a lot of people forward. So I hope some of you can join me for that. But now with that, let's turn to Igor. So Igor, tell us a little bit more about your Reorganize Your Workspace, which is a little shorter range than Stephanie's.
Yeah, definitely. I think my project has some similarities with Stephanie's, but on a smaller scale, because I think I have only to reorganize my actually desk and what's near it, because I have 3 projects and all of them are getting done at the table. Because I have a full-time job and I, deal with documents and basically sit at a laptop. Also, I am enrolled into courses now, which take different time on different weeks, but still I am committed to them. I devote some time to it. And I have to switch between the stuff I have for work, for one of the courses, for the second course, and it's all mixed up, I think, on my table, and it's hard to. I don't really feel organized in all these three projects, so I could switch.
What's the third project, Igor?
2 study courses and job work. My work,
okay,
yeah.
all right. 2 different study courses. Got it.
Yeah. And also, I think the fourth part would be my hobbies, the books I read for pleasure, and also, printed materials from the Thinking Lab, and some notes, just some motivational notes I can put somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, and I would really like to make that easily accessible, so that when I go out, for example, for the classes, or I sometimes work in the office, I really know where I can get the necessary stuff, but now it is all over the place.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
let me ask you a couple of dumb questions. So I think we all see the value here. The value is ease, organization. These are the value, right? And it's just going to make it be just everything will be more efficient and there'll be just less sand in the gears, right? So if you sat down and thought about it, what do you think a solution might look like? Do you have any idea at all, or is this something that sounds like a hard problem?
No, I have some ideas. I know the stuff I need to buy to make it easier. I need more folders because I would be able to title them, and put all the necessary printed materials there. Also some new stationery because I make a lot of notes, but I am not completely satisfied with the material I'm using. Yeah, I think I have some idea.
You have
I
some
just
idea.
need time to sit and plan everything.
So what do you anticipate is the problem? And I think this is very helpful for planning a 2-week.
I think it's just that I really need to give it some time because it's not going to be, although it seems like it's a very little goal, but there is so much stuff actually in these 3 projects, and I'm constantly devoting my time to it, and I'm constantly in it, and I have to switch very quickly, and there's no time I can just take a time to reorganize it. That's it, I think.
What I'm hearing is 2 things. One is that it's going to be hard to carve out time to do the thinking associated with this. And the other thing I think I'm hearing is that you need to be able to switch quickly.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, I guess.
Because I'll tell you, one of the things that crossed my mind when I heard this as a goal is that you may come up with a theoretical idea that would work great, but then on every switch, you'd need to maintain it, right? Like if you say, okay, I'm going to have folders for this, this, and this. Well, then every time you finish work on one, you need to put stuff in the folder and put it away and then take out the folder from the other place. And that this is actually one of the things that makes this kind of thing difficult. And, I actually thought there would be something like this in Stephanie's goal, but she's figured out how to have them have separate areas. That's like, that's not a solution for you, right?
Yeah, it's not a solution. It has to be accessible, but still it has to be organized.
Right. So I actually think this is a process goal, Igor, as opposed to, as opposed to buying stationery and folders and things like that. I think that that the real issue is you want a well-oiled machine that can help you switch between these tasks and not lose your place. And
Yeah.
when you say these documents, so these are things you've printed out, is that what I'm hearing? This is a paper. You work in paper and you work in printouts and stuff. This is not on your computer. I just want to make sure I'm not.
No, some stuff is on my computer, but I also got a lot of papers, and it's some different notebooks and stuff.
Yes. So does each one have its own notebook?
Yes, each one has its own notebook.
So you are semi-organized already.
Yeah, I am semi-organized, yes.
Right. So I think to figure out what the actual problem is, what the first thing it is to do, because this is what I do with every goal, right? Because what we want to do is we want to figure out the tasks. So a task is something that you can actually do in one sitting. You can do it in less than 2 or 3 hours. Maybe you can do it in half an hour, but it needs to be something you can do without a bathroom break. That's the test, right? And so that, because that's a small enough amount of time that you can just sit down and power through and get it done. And you can find that, you can find that in the evening, or you can find that some morning or something like that. And what you want to do is you want to figure out a task that's going to move this forward the most till you have some result. And then the next task that you think after that's done, this is the next thing that's going to move this forward. And you see, if you think the first task is sit down and figure out the whole solution, that feels very open-ended, and it's not clear you can do it just sitting down. I mean, at least it's not clear to you based on what you've said. See, I mean, if you thought, well, if I just sit down and in 15 minutes do thinking on paper on this, I could figure it out, you would have done that already. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I remember when I first reorganized my whole room, I really used thinking on paper, and then I got clearer on it. So probably I really need to think on paper first, and about the current situation.
Yeah, so it may be that, so see, if that sounds easy to you, if you think, gee, if I just spend 15 minutes thinking on paper on this, I bet I can move this forward.
Yeah.
Then that's definitely what I would make the first task. That's for me, for sure, that's what I would do to get just some overall idea. Let me just suggest a couple things that might come up in the thinking on paper, because I would definitely, as part of the thinking on paper, what you want to do is try to figure out, what are you worried about here? And the thing that you're most worried about is probably the thing you need to tackle first. So like for me, like here's an image that just went through my head. There's a book by Twyla Tharp on creativity. I think it's called The Creative Habit, but that might be a different book. But anyway, she's a choreographer who wrote a book on creativity. And one of the things she talked about is that for every new project, she would get a box. And she put everything related to that project. So you're like, one thing you could try is you could just try 3 boxes, I mean 4 boxes, depending on what it is, right? And you could just try putting them on the floor when you're not using them, then putting the stuff back in the box and see what a difference that made. Now I'm just completely making that up, Igor. But you see, that very simple idea would help you see what's the difficulty in remembering that I need to put this away and take out the next thing. And then how organized does that box need to be? I don't know. But if you could just have 4 bins for your 4 or 3 bins, 4 bins, I'm not sure exactly how many bins you need, but you can figure that out in 15 minutes of thinking on paper. Something like that could be a trivial change to what you're doing now, because you've already got a notebook. You've already got, some papers, right? You just need something to make it easier to keep them separate and something easier to make it to switch between them. And, but once you did that, you might find, you know what? It's too hard to do this. I need to only tidy up at the end of each day. I mean, I'm just making this up. Suppose you found that out. Well, that would be an objective problem. And then you might say, okay, so what can I do to make it easier to tidy up? And so, okay, so the thought that occurs to me is color coding, right? So, I mean, I color code all my book notebooks have a green cover. The other notebooks can be any color at all. My journal is smaller. So my journal is small. My book notebooks are green colored. I mean, I actually have green construction paper I tape onto them when I don't have a convenient green notebook. And then my other one is whatever color. So I can tell at a glance which kind of notebook this is. And you could do that for your 3 boxes, right? And if the boxes were all gray, you could put construction paper on them and make them colored. And you could buy some colored folders. I mean, I'm just making that up. But then that would mean that anytime you decide, oh my God, I'm disorganized, I have to get organized, you would just go red, red, green, 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 green. You wouldn't even have to look at anything. Or you would, everything you printed out, you would mark with a highlighter, this is blue, this is green. And you would just do that as soon as it came off the printer. So you never had to look at it. Maybe that would be enough. I don't know, but I'm a real big minimalist on this kind of thing. If you're
Mhm.
the system, you want to make the system be as small as possible to get the biggest payoff. And part of the way you figure out what the biggest payoff is what's the biggest problem? Where is this causing me? What's the pain point here? And the more you can directly go after that pain point, the number one pain point, the faster you can get something that works. And then sometimes you're done, right? I'm also
Yeah.
a big believer in,
I think after listening to you, I am more convinced that this is actually a process goal or a habit issue.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Because that's going to be, to me, that's going to be the big barrier in doing this. That's one of the problems. People spend a whole bunch of time figuring out, okay, this is my organizational system, and they get it all set up and they do it once and then they never do it again. It's like, okay, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need some way to be able to ramp it up. So,
Yeah, I'm clear on it now. Thank you.
okay, great, Igor. That's fantastic. All right. Well, who else has a question? So this could be, you can get coaching on your goal. Some of you are in launch. You can get coaching on your launch goal. Some of you are thinking about launch. Maybe you have a question about how launch works. I could answer that. Or anything semi-related to this class. I'm going to be quiet here and see if I got any questions. You can raise your hand or Ginger.
I'm sorry, I'm a tad disorganized here. I shouldn't have done that. I should do it. There we go in the
It's
gallery.
totally
There we go.
fine. Yep.
Okay, good. You said the key, I think the word was result. You were talking small steps.
2 weeks.
Key result, okay, is in writing is an outline.
Yes.
What would be the
That's
key?
Typically
sorry.
the first key result. Usually you can get an outline, at least a basic outline in 2 weeks for whatever you're writing, right?
Yes, I understood the principle, the outline or the model or whatever it is. That's sort of a rough thing that sends you
Right.
off in the right direction. What would be the equivalent in cleaning up? I mean, just cleaning up the house. What is the equivalent of that
Okay,
first
great.
step?
And this is the whole house.
Yeah,
And you mean literally cleaning, not tidying?
I mean, well, ultimately, I mean getting rid of crap. But sorry, but
Okay, no, but that's totally fine.
That
So I
is
just want to
quite
get clear on the
different.
goal, right? No, that's totally fine. What you want to get is you want to have every room be spacious and organized and decluttered and clean. Is that right?
yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, what bothers you the most right now? Is it that the carpet has dirt on it, or is it that the rooms are cluttered?
It's that I have too much detritus it really is a little broader than that. I'm trying to get rid of things. And I'm really trying to get rid of my past.
Okay. Well, okay. Now you get to embrace everything from your past and you get to get rid of the concrete things that are not serving you today, right?
We're working on it. It's
right.
hard.
Emotionally, I just thinking I'm getting rid of my past, I think that sets you up for a psychological problem, I think. So I definitely, I mean, we could talk about that separately,
No, I'm with you.
but it sounds to me like the thing that bothers you the most is the stuff.
Stuff.
What's the problem with reducing the stuff? Again, you see, we're going to have to figure out what her 2-week key result is.
Okay.
We need to know what's the biggest problem with reducing her stuff.
Oh, is that a question?
That's a question, right?
Oh, okay. My biggest problem is emotional attachment.
Okay. So, and so when you go around and look, you don't want to let go of anything. It's like in theory, you'd like to let go of it, but when you actually look at things, you don't want to let go.
In some cases, that's true. Yes, yes, yes. That's,
Okay.
yes, that's
So-
accurate.
So then I'm just going to ask another dumb question.
Sure.
What
They're
if you
not dumb.
So I'm going to ask another straightforward, simple, logical, not trying to just something I don't understand, but you probably know exactly.
Okay.
What would be the problem with just getting rid of everything that you're not emotionally attached to?
There would be no problem.
Okay. Now, would that like completely change? Would that like really help this problem a lot? Would you feel like you have a lot more space and a lot more organization?
Yes, and I think it might, a little bit of that. I've done a little bit of that. I'm working on it. And I find that it puts me into a role. And it actually puts me into a, hey, I can get rid of this too. Well, look, what's about, you know, the other thing is I'm finding that if I find worthy recipients, that also makes it easy to get rid of it.
Okay. So so let me just tell you, because I've actually, like, I helped my mother do this.
Ah,
I grew up in a farmhouse that had 12 rooms,
oh,
in
wow.
small rooms, but 12 rooms, an attic, a cellar, a shed, a garage, and a 40-foot by 80-foot barn.
I think I see where this is going.
And if you own a 40-foot by 80-foot barn and you live on that property for 40 years, everybody who declutters their house gives you things. The kids never throw anything away. Everything goes in the barn. The barn was full. Whole house and the whole barn were full. My mother decluttered that whole thing. I mean, this is like the greatest gift she gave her kids. She cleared the whole thing. Now, I helped her with parts of it, but I saw how
Wow.
she did it, right? And so part of what you do for this is you set intermediate goals. So the barn was the first thing she wanted to reduce. And you know what she did? Or first thing she did?
You do.
Told the kids, you have to get everything that you want out of here. And she set a date, and she hired a moving van. And she said, and she made us come up there and decide what we were going to keep. And then everything that we didn't want, she could decide what she wanted to sell. So she sold some. So she did it in layers. Layering, just like you layer when you write, like an outline is a layer. And then you know, a draft is a layer, and then editing is a layer. That's the same. If you have a whole house that you're trying to get rid of, a layer would be you do something through the whole house. Now, sometimes it makes sense to break it up into rooms. So once she had done the whole barn, then the challenge was the attic, because everything that was really hard in the barn got put in the attic, right?
Oh.
So the attic, which had been pretty well cleaned out, had all the hard stuff in it. And she and I actually marched through that. There was one amazing weekend where she had really set a deadline. And she and I took 2 days and opened every box in the attic and decided, and you know, and I made her make decisions on it. She actually never forgave me. That's not true. My mother and I had a great relationship, but years later she was saying, "No, I should have kept that. I should have kept that." Anyway, but we went through we literally opened every box in the attic so that she could make decisions about it. But the point here is you definitely need a divide and conquer strategy. And you should do the thing that gets the biggest bang for the buck first, because momentum really matters on these things. And so let me ask you, in 2 weeks, do you think you could actually do a one pass through your, and you need to be completely honest here, because I have no idea. Could you do a one pass through your house and just collect up, you know, everything that you want to throw away, give away, that's a no-brainer? Could you do that in 2 weeks? I'm asking, I don't know.
I have been doing that, and that's a very excellent idea. I'll tell you, I forgot to say.
Whoa, wait, hold on.
I'm sorry.
But I said in
Yes.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, I've been doing it over time. Let's see, in 2 weeks, can I eviscerate all the non-essentials?
Get all the rest of that out. Yeah. Could you do that in 2 weeks?
So then,
Because you've been doing it over time, so it sounds to me like it's a bigger project than that.
it is a huge project.
So then, no, you can't do it in 2 weeks.
Well, I can get, in 2 weeks, I should be able to get rid of the things that are not near and dear to me and that I have. May I add one thing here? I see
Sure.
part of the problem is that, as I said, it's very satisfying when I find someone who needs the things I'm getting rid of. For instance, I had a bunch of little bird things, statues and things, and I just gave them to the bird seed guy, and he was
Okay, great.
ecstatic. He
Okay,
was
great.
ecstatic. It was really great. I got rid of all that stuff, and he liked it. So
But hold on.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
asked you, so this is really important, Ginger. It's totally fine if some things can be given away easily if you have someone to give them to.
Takes time to figure out who.
That is not the low-hanging fruit, right? There are some things that you're happy to give away, like just to a generic donate or throw away because you think nobody wants them. That is the low-hanging fruit. Right. So I'm trying to make a distinction. I'm trying to figure out what's the easy thing that you could do in 2 weeks and is it worth doing? I don't know.
The things that are donatable, that I have no attachment
really-
to,
Right.
that I
It-
feel,
it-
sorry.
Right, go
Yes, I
ahead.
could do that in 2 weeks, yes.
So you really think you could do that in 2 weeks?
Yeah,
And how much stuff do you think that is? I mean, so this would mean like every day, how many rooms in your house?
billions and, rooms. Wait a minute.
How many bedrooms in the house?
Okay, 3.
Okay.
There's one of them's a study,
Right.
kitchen,
Yeah.
living room, music room, basement. That's
That's 7. Yeah, okay.
And bird room. I
And
think it was a
bird room. Okay.
bird room.
All right, great. So just let's look and see if this is realistic. So do you think you could do each room in 2 hours? You go into a room and say, okay, I'm taking everything out that is a no-brainer, that's no problem from this room.
No,
How long would it take you for a particular room?
that would depend on whether I could, you see what happens? What happens is I look at things, I say, oh, look at all this. This is the driver for the Mac something back in 20 years ago. And that stops me. So I think I
Okay,
need to
so
get a
hold
mental
on.
set
So
different.
hold on.
Oh, sorry.
So
Sorry.
the answer is no.
Yeah,
Right. So what you're
yeah.
saying is you can't just go into a room and take out the thing. So this
That's
is
correct.
very important, Ginger. You have a lot of experience with this. And part of the way that you're going to set this goal in a way that will motivate you is you're going to take into account all of that experience. Right. So when I asked, I mean, I wasn't saying go do this. I wanted to know, was this actually practical for you? And what you're saying is, no, it's not practical. Because
Thank
when
you.
I go in and I start looking at stuff, then I
Right.
start thinking about this and this and this, and I may eventually decide I don't want to keep it, but I get bogged down on each individual thing. That's what I think I'm hearing from you, right?
That's correct.
So we now have, so for you to break the back of this problem, you are going to need a different process. So this is also a process, I think, because part of the issue here is you may actually need to do some high-level decisions, right?
Yeah.
And you may actually need to develop a new process. So let me just tell you the kind of thing that I would recommend in this case, just so you can get the idea. If you figure out that the hard part on something is making the decisions, then you need a decision process for that, one that you actually think is going to make it easier, that actually works for you. And so, for example, like I just in the newsletter that's going to come out on Sunday, you're going to read about my new 5 criteria for picking a topic for a newsletter article. And I made that up because I realized that the articles I was picking or the article that I picked a couple of weeks ago was way too long. It took me 14 hours to write this article. It was ridiculous. right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, part of the reason it took 14 hours is when I realized it was taking 6 hours, I actually put some time into thinking, okay, how do I make sure this doesn't happen again? And that is
Yeah.
what resulted in my new principles. The newsletter article I wrote today took an hour and a half because I had this new process. Now, it does take some thinking, and it takes some thinking about the cases that you're having trouble with. And this is where, you know, when you said, I want to get rid of my past, that thought can actually make it harder to make the decisions about the things from the past. So
I
there's
see that.
actually introspective work to figure out, why is this hard for me? And why is this difficult for me? And what do I think could make it easier? And in your case, like, for example, I'm just going to make something up here. Let's see. And this is the kind of thing that actually you need to figure out for yourself, because it's going to be a very uniquely Ginger process, right? I mean, I can help guide someone to come up with this process, but it's going to be a uniquely you process. Your process for clearing
My
out your
house.
house is going to be different from the process my mother used to clear out her house, because you're different people and you have different values and different goals. So, for example, suppose you decided that there was a difference between the things that really what you wanted to do is you wanted to do it wholesale in some way. And you went through you decide the first step is to come up with 5 categories of people I want to donate things to. I'm just making this up. I don't know. And you went through your whole house and you said, okay, I think if I could find someone who likes bird stuff, and I could find someone who likes this kind of stuff, and I could find someone or an organization that likes this kind of stuff, and I come up with 5 of these, I could clear out a lot of stuff. And you do that not by actually clearing anything, but by going around to each room and saying, is there a category of stuff here that if I had someone, I could give it away? And then you would do research on trying to find an organization or a person, probably an organization, that could take that kind of stuff. Like, my mother was a master embroiderer. I mean, literally, there's a thing you can get certified as a master embroiderer. And my mother was certified on her first trip. She was certified as a master embroiderer. And she had one of her, the spare bedroom was literally about 25% full from floor to ceiling of embroidery stuff. And we found an organization, a club, where we could donate a ton of embroidery stuff, because we didn't want to throw it away. I mean, there's a lot of money invested in that embroidery stuff, right? I mean, floss and patterns and books and all kinds of things. And that was part of the challenge, because we weren't comfortable just throwing that away. But we found an organization where, I mean, it was a lot of volume, could be just given all at once. And that might be, I mean, I don't know that that's the case, Ginger, but given that that seems like a way forward, that might be actually your biggest bang for your buck to get started. But part of the way you're going to figure that out is by trying some things and thinking, well, how could I do this? Recognizing your process is what's bogging you down. What would be a more wholesale process that I could do? And then experimenting with that, basically.
I think you're spot on. Thank you. I have done that with some, I made a major mistake when I moved. I moved quite a distance and I brought everything. So back where I was, I had all my sources in place. I knew where things went. This has been
it would have been easier to give it away then, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Oh,
I would have had
so
that.
now-
I would have known where.
So this is a regret that you have, right? That you need to process. You need to mourn that, because it's actually harder for you now than it would have been then. Although you had reasons, and you had probably good reasons for moving when you did. I think I remember when you moved. I think you had good reasons.
Yes.
Right. You wanted to move quickly, and that was partly why you deferred that decision. So you need to honor that decision and also mourn the challenge. And if you know who you would have given it to in your previous location, that is a lead to who you would give it to now.
If you can find them. Yes, I agree.
Well-
I think you're spot on. That's the way to think of it more.
Right. And to not be regretting that you didn't do it then, because there's, that is water over the dam, but you may
Yes,
need
it
to
is.
process that decision a little bit. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, great. This is a great example of how when you set a goal, it brings up a lot of emotions. In this particular case, it brings up a past. It's like this decision, when she goes to this decision, she realizes, oh, that would have been easier 5 years ago and so. Rats. And then, you know, self-criticism come up. So you need to be able to manage the self-criticism. Okay. You will figure out a process. I guarantee it. No. Okay, good. Good for now, Ginger?
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
And okay, good. So Philip, you had a question or an issue that you wanted to bring up?
Actually, since you just mentioned morning, I've been wanting to ask you, do you have any exercises in the library that are good for doing celebration in morning?
So what I recommend, so for those who aren't in the thinking lab and don't know what that is, I recommend these two processes, celebration and mourning, for getting clearer on your values in various situations. So if you're excited and things went well, it's really great to celebrate because you get clearer on what is the value you gained. And if you're sad, it's really good to mourn because you get clearer on the values you lost. In both cases, this is important. Understanding your values is important for being able to set priorities and manage your motivation and all kinds of things. So the tactic that I recommend for celebration and mourning is the full-scale empathy bath. So empathy bath is in the Thinker's Toolkit, which is you can get as a PDF for $20, or you can, if you're in the US, you can get the physical copy. It's so expensive to mail it out of the US that we don't mail it out of the US anymore. But it's a process of, you look at all of the emotions, whatever it is that you want to mourn. Like for Ginger, she would think about that decision she made to take everything. And she would go through all the families of emotions. So she'd say, why might I be angry about that? Maybe there's someone who pushed her into doing that and they should be angry at them. Why might I feel gratitude for that? Well, this made the move easier. I'm just making this up. Why might I feel fear? I don't know why she might feel fear about that decision. Maybe, so here's the kind of thing that could happen. You know, I didn't make that decision right. Maybe I won't make this decision right. That could be a reason you might feel fear. Why might you feel relief? Well, realizing it's in the past, maybe I feel relief. You do that for all 8 families of emotions, positive and negative affect. And that's just the first step. The next step in the empathy bath is you go through everything you wrote and you identify in every sentence you can, what is the deep rational value that you want? So if it's a positive emotions, you name the value that you got, or a value-oriented one. If it's a threat-oriented one, you think, okay, what's the value that was threatened here? And you literally do that. I do this in my 4-color pen. I mark in green the deep rational values. And if I see any sentence that looks fishy, like Ginger was saying something self-critical about herself. Like she said, these aren't your words, but it's the kind of thing that you were saying. I made a dumb decision when I moved, right? That would be a self-critical thought. I would underline that in red. And as I went through, I would mark all the values, underline in red, anything like that. The next step in the empathy bath is to challenge all of those thoughts. And that will help you get another set of values. And that is the process whereby I recommend you do celebration and mourning, because when you need to do celebration and mourning, it means that it's not 100% obvious what's going on. You need to get clearer on the values here. And this makes sure you cover the waterfront, and it makes sure you challenge any assumptions that need to be challenged. Is that helpful, Philip?
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to know, because I was looking for a tactic. I wasn't sure which one to use, and now I know. And I've done an empathy bath before, so
okay.
I at least know how it goes.
Okay, great, terrific. And was that your question, or did you have something else?
That's all for now.
Okay, good, great. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, but I will hold on 1 second to see if I lure anyone else wanting help or information on anything else. I hope to see some of you in the launch. It starts a week from Saturday. It's going to be terrific. We start, I guess I didn't explain this earlier on. It starts with a thinking day, which means that I'm on the Zoom from, we're going to do it with, we have a new set of times from 10 to 11:45 a.m. Eastern, and then from 2 to 3:15 Eastern, and then from 5 to 6 Eastern. And I'm there to help people set their goals. I'm there to coach on anything they need coached on, answer any questions, help them find things in the Thinking Lab. And that's how we kick off our launch. But that's available for everyone in the Thinking Lab. And if you're in the Thinking Lab and you're not sure if you want to do launch, I recommend you go to the launch tab in the Thinking Lab. You have the materials for launch. You can start to define an initiative, get coaching on it on that Saturday on Thinking Day, and decide then if you want to join the launch. Okay, with that, I'm going to draw a line here. Thank you guys for coming. It's been fun talking about your goals. And I hope I want those goals to motivate you because I want you to get those results. Here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jean.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jean.